In 2026, the official cost to raise a child in America just hit $315,000. Financial gurus will show you Excel sheets on how to budget for it. But here is what nobody tells you. That $315,000 isn't just a budgeting goal. It's a termination fee for your marriage. Data shows that 68% of couples experience severe financial trauma in the first year of having a baby. But the actual trap isn't the math. It's the resentment that builds when your bank account forces you to choose between your biological clock and your financial survival. My name is Peter, and today we are going to look at the brutal math that viral budgeting videos hide from you. I'm going to prove why affording a kid right now is a mathematically impossible equation that isn't just breaking bank accounts, it's breaking homes. And to understand how this trap actually springs, you need to look at what happens when the math and the secrets collide. The baby was 3 weeks old when Kevin found the first bill. Not the hospital bill they were expecting. They'd budgeted for it, saved for it, talked about it for 9 months like responsible adults who thought they were ready. This was a different bill, a bill from a collections agency for $4,200 in his wife's name from a credit card he didn't know existed. He found it on the kitchen counter, underneath a congratulations card from her mother.
His daughter was asleep in the next room. His wife was in the shower, and Kevin was standing in his kitchen at 11 p.m., holding a piece of paper that told him the woman he married had been hiding something from him before they even said "I do." He didn't wake her up that night. He sat at the kitchen table until 3 a.m., alone, with a newborn on the monitor and a number on a piece of paper, and the slow, sickening feeling that the life he thought he was building was sitting on a foundation he'd never been allowed to inspect. I need you to understand something before we go any further. What happened to Kevin is not a story about a bad wife. It's not a story about dishonesty or betrayal in the way we normally talk about those words. It is a story about what happens when two people walk into the most expensive commitment of their lives, parenthood, carrying financial secrets they were too ashamed, too scared, or too in love to reveal. And it is happening right now, in delivery rooms, in nurseries, at 3 a.m. kitchen tables all across this country. Kevin and Amber had been together for 4 years, married for 2. They were the couple everyone assumed had it together. Kevin, 31, managed operations at a logistics company. Amber, 29, was a licensed physical therapist. Combined income around $112,000. They owned a small townhouse. They drove reasonable cars. They took 1 vacation a year and always came back with photos that made their friends feel slightly inadequate. But here's what their friends didn't see. Amber had been carrying $23,000 in credit card debt since she was 26, before Kevin, before the wedding, before the pregnancy. Debt she'd accumulated during a period of her life she didn't talk about. A bad breakup, a job loss, a year where surviving cost more than she was earning, and the credit card was the only thing standing between her and a phone that got shut off. She wasn't irresponsible. She was human, but she was ashamed, deeply, paralyzingly ashamed. And every time the relationship got more serious, every time Kevin mentioned buying a house or having a baby or building something permanent, the debt got harder to mention, because the longer you wait to say a hard thing, the more impossible it becomes to say at all. So she didn't say it, and Kevin didn't ask, not the right questions, not in the right way. They'd had the money talk that couples have, the surface version, the comfortable version. They'd combined some accounts, they'd made a budget, but they had never sat down and said, "Show me everything, every account, every debt, every number, all of it." So they built a life on an incomplete picture, and then they had a baby, and the incomplete picture became a crisis.
Here is what nobody tells you about having a child in America right now. A baby is not just a life event, it is a financial earthquake. And if your foundation has any cracks in it at all, any hidden debt, any secret account, any number one partner doesn't know about, the earthquake will find them. The average cost of childbirth in the United States, even with insurance, runs between $4,500 and $11,000 out of pocket. That's just the delivery. That's before the pediatrician visits, the formula if breastfeeding doesn't work, the gear, the childcare. Childcare. Let's talk about childcare for a second, because this number should be national news, and somehow it isn't. The average cost of infant daycare in the United States is now $1,300 a month. In major metro areas, it's closer to $2,200. Some cities, San Francisco, New York, Boston, you're looking at $2,800 to $3,500 a month for a single infant. That is a mortgage payment for a child who cannot yet hold their own head up. And that's the world Kevin and Amber walked into. Except they walked into it with $23,000 of hidden debt that had now, with interest and the financial chaos of a newborn, begun expanding like something alive. Now, I want to ask you something, and I want you to really think about this before you answer. If you found out your partner had been hiding $23,000 in debt from you, debt that existed before your relationship, before your marriage, before your child, what would you call that? Would you call it a mistake, a secret, a betrayal? Or would you call it the thing that most people are too polite to say out loud? That financial secrets in a marriage are a form of deception, regardless of how they started or how much the person loves you. Because here's where people get divided. And I genuinely want to know where you land on this, so drop it in the comments right now. Some people say, pre-relationship debt is your own business. You didn't accumulate it together. It existed before he or she was even in the picture. You're not obligated to disclose your full financial history just because you're in love. People deserve privacy, even in a marriage. Other people say, the moment you decide to build a shared financial life, buy a house together, have a child together, everything on the table becomes both people's business. Because your $23,000 of hidden debt is now my problem when the daycare bill comes and we can't breathe. Which one is right? I'll tell you what I think at the end. Keep watching. Let's do the math that Kevin did at that 3 a.m. kitchen table, because this is where the story stops being emotional and starts being terrifying. Kevin pulled out a notepad, old school, because sometimes the weight of a number only really lands when you write it down by hand. Combined take-home after taxes, roughly $82,000 a year, about $6,850 a month. Mortgage, $1,750. Car payments, both $890. Insurance, utilities, subscriptions, $620. Groceries, pre-baby, they were spending $600 a month. Post-baby with formula, they were already at $780. Student loans, $430 between them. Minimum credit card payments, the ones he knew about, $180. That's $4,650 before the baby cost a single dollar. They have $2,200 left. Infant daycare in their area, $1,400. They have $800 left. Pediatrician copays, diapers, wipes, formula, the random 2 a.m. Amazon order when something isn't working and you're desperate, another $600 conservative. They have $200 left. $200 a month for a family of 3, for emergencies, savings, car repairs, anything unexpected, any joy. And that was before Kevin factored in Amber's hidden debt, the collections account, the interest accumulating, the credit score implications that would affect every financial decision they'd make for the next 7 years. He stared at that number, $200, and something shifted in him permanently. Because $200 a month is not a budget, it's a countdown. It's the sound of a clock ticking toward the moment where one unexpected thing, one medical bill, one car repair, 1 week of missed work, tips the whole structure over. And Kevin knew in that moment what millions of new parents discovered too late. You don't have a baby budget problem, you have a margin problem. And when you have no margin, there is no room for secrets, because the secrets take up the space where the margin should be. Here's the pattern I need you to see, because Kevin and Amber are not an anomaly. They are the average. The American Psychological Association has consistently found that financial stress is the leading cause of relationship conflict in this country, and multiple studies on divorce patterns show that financial incompatibility, not infidelity, not communication problems, not growing apart, is the number one cited reason for divorce in the first 5 years of marriage. The first 5 years, the years that almost always include a first home, a first child, or both. And the financial incompatibility rarely shows up as two people who simply disagree about money. It shows up as two people who never fully revealed their relationship with money to each other before the stakes got too high to absorb the truth. The hidden car loan from before the wedding, the credit card transferred to a zero-interest account and forgotten, except it wasn't really forgotten, it was avoided. The student loan that's in deferment and feels theoretical until it isn't. The family loan from a parent that was never mentioned because it felt personal and not really like real debt. All of those things are real debt, and all of them have a way of surfacing at exactly the worst moment. Which brings me to what I call the newborn debt trap. It's not just the debt that existed before the baby, it's the debt created by the baby, accelerated by the financial pressure of the baby, and then layered on top of whatever was already hidden. Here's how it works. The baby arrives. Income drops because one partner takes leave. Paid if you're lucky, unpaid if you're most Americans, since the United States remains one of the only developed countries without federally mandated paid family leave. So you're already down income. Then the costs spike immediately and unpredictably. Then the credit card comes out. Not because anyone is irresponsible, but because the math simply doesn't work anymore, and the credit card is the pressure valve. The average American family adds $6,000 to $10,000 in new credit card debt in the 12 months following the birth of their first child. Let that land for a second. $6,000 to $10,000 of new debt on top of whatever was already there in a single year, while you're sleep-deprived, emotionally raw, and trying to figure out how to keep a tiny human alive. And then the bills start coming, and the conversations start happening, and the things that were never said start becoming impossible to avoid. And that is the moment, not the wedding, not the house, not the first big fight, is the moment that tests whether a marriage survives. Kevin woke Amber up the next morning after the baby's 6 a.m. feeding. He didn't yell, he didn't accuse, he put the collections notice on the table in front of her and said 4 words, "What else is there?" And Amber cried. And then she showed him everything, the full picture. The number he hadn't known, the shame she'd been carrying for 3 years of their relationship, growing heavier every time they made a major financial decision together without her saying it. The total? When they added up the hidden debt, the new baby credit card charges, and the interest that had been quietly compounding? $47,000. Kevin told me later, the number wasn't the thing that almost ended their marriage. It was the realization that she had let him make financial decisions, the house, the baby timing, the decision not to build a bigger emergency fund, without the information he needed to make them correctly. He hadn't failed. He'd been failed. And Amber knew it. And that knowing, that shared recognition of what the silence had cost them, that was the thing they had to decide whether they could survive.
So let me give you the 4 things that Kevin and Amber did that actually saved their marriage. Not the romantic version. The real version. The first thing is what I call the total disclosure conversation, and it only works if both people agree to zero judgment for 24 hours. You sit down, you pull up everything, every account, every debt, every number, every financial decision you've made or avoided making. You put it all on the table, not to assign blame, to see the actual picture for the first time, because you cannot navigate toward a destination if one person is hiding part of the map. The second thing is separating the debt from the person. Amber's $23,000 didn't make her a bad person. It made her a person who'd had a hard few years before Kevin and hadn't found the courage to say so. The debt needed to be addressed, but the shame needed to be separated from the debt, because shame keeps secrets alive, and secrets are what almost cost them everything. The third thing is building what I call the margin plan before you touch anything else. Not a budget, not a debt payoff calculator, a plan to create breathing room, because a family with zero margin cannot make good decisions. Every decision gets made in panic, in reaction, in survival mode. You need 60 to 90 days of expenses in an account that does not get touched before you start any ambitious debt payoff strategy. Because the next emergency is coming. It is always coming. And without margin, it wins every time. The fourth thing is the monthly financial meeting. Every month, both partners present, all accounts open, every number visible, no exceptions. No, I'll handle it. No, don't worry about it. Both people in the room looking at the same screen, carrying the same information, making decisions with the same map. Not because you don't trust each other, because you love each other enough to not let one person carry it alone anymore. Kevin and Amber are still together. Their daughter is almost 2 years old now. They paid off $19,000 of the debt in 14 months by selling things, cutting subscriptions they'd forgotten they had, and having the uncomfortable conversation with both sets of parents about why birthday gifts needed to be practical for a while. They're not out of it yet, but they're in it together. Both of them, eyes open. And Kevin told me something recently that I've been thinking about ever since. He said, I used to think the debt was the problem, but the debt was just the symptom. The problem was that we were two people living in the same house, building the same life, and neither of us really knew what the other one was afraid of. The baby didn't break his marriage. The baby just turned on all the lights. So here's where I land on the question I asked you earlier. Is pre-relationship debt your private business? Yes and no. Your history is yours. Your shame is yours. The hard years before someone loved you, those belong to you. But the moment you ask someone to build a financial future with you, a house, a child, a shared account, a shared risk, the numbers become shared, not because love demands confession, but because partnership demands honesty about anything that affects the shared mission. And a $23,000 debt that grows to $47,000 during the most financially vulnerable year of a marriage, that affects the shared mission. Tell them before the baby. Tell them before the house. Tell them before the moment where the truth has to fight its way through fear and sleeplessness and a newborn crying in the next room. Tell them at the kitchen table with a bottle of wine and a spreadsheet when the stakes feel low enough that honesty feels possible. Because that is infinitely easier than the alternative. The $315,000 in the title, that's the estimated lifetime cost of raising a child to 18 in America right now, not counting college. That's the financial commitment two people make the moment that test comes back positive. You deserve to make that commitment with the full picture in front of you, both of you. So tonight, not next week, not after the holidays, not when things calm down, tonight, ask your partner the question Kevin wishes he'd asked 3 years earlier. Is there anything about money that you've been afraid to tell me? That one question, that one moment of vulnerability at a kitchen table, that is the most protective financial decision you will ever make.